this year our theme is really about bringing purpose to every conversation that we have. And, um, and we talked about bringing your purpose to the company, and I'll show you how we're going to launch that, but also how to connect and move our purpose project forward to its next generation. So I'm super excited about this. Our theme is about these connecting the dots, about connecting the conversation and moving the purpose project forward with you, with our consultants, the people, the candidates that are coming to us looking for great opportunities, and even our clients and our communities at large. So we're going to start with the presentation about purpose, and we're going to go to the first slide. And I don't know if you've ever seen this quote before, but here it is. The two most important days in your life are the day that you're born and the day that you find out why. So we're going to talk about those days. And this is why I think it's so funny that this was not planned. This was why I was laughing a while ago when Kuda was giving his speech to talk about not only our individual two most important days, but also the company's two most important days. And so if it's okay with you, I'd like to share both of those with you. The two most important days for my life, and then also for Entelligence. And so first, it was obviously September 9th, 1964. By the way, you didn't even have to pay for a filter to get this old-timey look back in 1964. But I was born in Caldwell, Texas, and if you look at that handsome guy on the left, I was the most handsome baby in Caldwell, Texas, born in Caldwell, Texas that day. In fact, I might have been the only baby that was born that month in Caldwell, Texas. I grew up in a small town, and that's my brother there to the right, Craig, who is just about a year older than me. But the second most important day of my life was this day, April 9th, 2011. And some of you that are on this screen were actually there at this event. Now, some of you heard me talk about this event before. This is the Entrepreneurs Organization. And I was the chair, the host of a conference of about 700 CEOs from around the world that came to Texas to learn about how do we grow our business, how do we move, grow our companies, and what are the skills that we needed to do that. But on this particular day, we did something different and that the organization had never done before. We asked a simple question. How can entrepreneurs, how can businesses come together and solve big problems in the world? And on this day, we hosted an event that the city of Houston donated the convention space. That's the George R. Brown Convention Center, about 5 miles from here. We partnered with the Houston Food Bank, the largest food bank I think in North America, that serves really tens of millions of meals a year. And about 30 social services organizations. And you see all those folks in the t-shirts. Those are white t-shirts that we had given to everyone that was there. These are all the CEOs from around the world. And on the t-shirt, it says SPARC, S-P-A-R-C. The instructions for the entire event were written on the t-shirt. It said, swap places, ask, receive, and connect. So you want to think about it like this. It was like Food Bank meets Undercover Boss, because we all became anonymous that day. And what we did is we hosted an event for thousands of folks in the city of Houston that were hungry. So think about this. We had food, truckloads of food. The Houston Food Bank organized this. We had social service organizations and 600, 700 CEOs walking around with one question for everyone that was there is, hey, what's up? What's going on? And we serve people food, but more importantly, when we asked the question, what's going on, we discovered the underlying issue of why folks needed food in the first place. So it could have been something related to their economic condition. It could have been a legal issue. It could have been a medical issue, but we had all the social services organizations there to help solve those problems while we were feeding them for a day. Now, there's three things that really stuck out or moved me that day, and I want to share those with you. One is it struck me that the people that were there, the people that we served, they weren't homeless. They were everyday men and women that were working, had a job, but were still struggling with some issue that caused them to be hungry. And it struck me that they all had a story to tell. And when we asked them the question, hey, what's going on? Would you like to sit down and have coffee and a cookie with me? Which we did that day. They told their story. And if we listened to them, we would understand that everybody's story had a journey. You could see how one person got to where they were, why they were in the circumstances, why they were in the place that they were. And it gave us an opportunity to help solve the problem. If somebody said this is a medical problem, we would say, oh, great, we have this agency right over here and they can help you with that. So that's the first thing that struck me. The second thing was that we as entrepreneurs that were there thinking that we're going to help other people and lift up other people and serve them food and get them help for their social services agencies, I would tell you that we probably got more out of that event, or as much out of that event as the people that we serve. Now, why do I say that? Well, I say that because I believe that we all have this place inside of ourselves that if we just get quiet enough to connect with it, which is what we were trying to do that day, we all have this place of where empathy and compassion starts to take over when we see someone else's suffering or someone else's hardship. And I believe that that empathy and that compassion is what we all really aspire to, whether we call it that or not. I think we all want to help. We all want to be helpful. We all want to lift others up. And I think this is really the place in that moment of empathy and compassion, of connecting with another human being's story, is where that place of authenticity, of love and service really lives. Well, the third thing, as many of you know, that I got from that day, probably from this moment, standing in the middle of this event, was I realized this was my purpose. This is what I was put here to do. And Warren often says, our mentor, my mentor, our coach, our executive chairman, Warren Rustan, many of you know, often says this: everything that we're doing up to that moment was preparation for that moment. But I would also tell you that over the next decade, what's happening in our company and what we've been doing together in our continual dialogue about the Purpose Project is really preparation for what we're doing next. But this moment, this day for me in April 2011 was one of those moments where time really just stood still. In fact, I would tell you, I felt like I've always been there. I'm always going to be there from here on out. It was a moment where I thought I was in my zone. I was at the core of my being. It's still hard for me to even talk about it today because it moved me to my core. And this is what I was meant to do. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. But I have a question for you, and we're going to go to Miro in just a minute. But I wonder about you, because this is a day where we want to connect to your purpose as well, not just to the company's purpose. I wonder how many times you've had these moments in life where time stood still, where you felt like you were in the zone, where maybe your heart beats a little bit faster and everything becomes more sharper and more clear, and you're in the flow in your life where everything lined up and you knew that you were on purpose. You see, I believe that you're here for a reason. And we talked a little bit about this on Monday. Not only are you here for a reason, but we're all here together in this moment for a reason. A lot of people never ask their question is, what are we all doing here? Who am I and why am I here? Years ago, I read this book, Deepak Chopra, 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. I've mentioned it so many times, and if you've never read this book, I invite you to pick it up. It changed my life, and especially this part where he talks about the law of Dharma, or the law of purpose. Everyone has a purpose in life, a unique gift, a special talent that you have to give to others. And when we blend this unique talent with service to others, we experience the ecstasy and the exaltation of our own spirit, which is really the ultimate goal. We all have a purpose in life. We all have that thing, that moment, that sacred thread that runs through everything that we do. It's not the titles that we have, mother, father, son, brother, daughter, sister, account executive, recruiter, friend. That's not who we are. We give ourselves those labels, so I think life makes sense for us, but that's not at the core who we are. There's a thread that runs through every one of those avenues. And when we touch that thread, everything in our life makes sense. And I believe, like Kuda said, it's not only the two most important days, it's what you do after that. And I think our primary job as human beings, once we understand what our purpose is, first is to seek it, but once we understand, is to spend our days living that. So some of you may already know your purpose. You may have already discovered those moments. Some of you may be still curious in discovering who you are and why you're here and what your purpose is. Some of you have maybe never even thought about this at all. That's okay too. But in any case, I want to play a game. And we're going to go to Miro. And I want you to think about a time in your life when you had one of those moments where time stood still, where everything seemed perfect, and perhaps you experienced your greatest joy in life. I want to hear from you now. What are some of those moments for you? So Winnie, where are we going to go on the Miro board? Okay, Winnie, take us through what you want people to do here.
All right, so everyone can come to me. You'll see me at the top of the blue circle. Awesome, y'all are rocking. You can see that everyone has a sticky note. What I would love for everyone to do is to kind of jot down a couple of words to address Steve's question, and he'll repeat that in 1 second. And then you can either leave your name, dash your name, or you can just type in your sticky note.
Great. So what I want you to think about is maybe there are some times when you were a kid. Maybe there was something that lit you up. Maybe there's a hobby or something that you love doing. Maybe it was a subject in school, a special teacher, a moment with someone that was important to you. Maybe it's sports. Some of you want to rescue all the dogs in the world. I know who you are. You know who you are. There are moments where time stands still for you. Maybe it was the birth of your child. Maybe it's a special relationship with a grandparent or friend, or something that inspires you or continued to inspired you then and inspires you now. Maybe it's a cause you're involved in. All of us have those moments. And you see what one of those moments were for me. I wonder if you would be willing to share some of those with us. So going to the Miro board, there's so many names on there, it's hard to read. But I see birth of Hudson. I'm going to guess Liz. That is one of the most inspiring moments. Or Lydia, there she is, just came into the world. Maddie, Haley had a wedding day, one of those inspiring moments. What are some of your other things, the moments that you felt like, this is it, this is what I'm meant to do? Nathan, wedding day and being in nature, delivering a litter of puppies. Those are all great. So I'll give you just another minute or two to write those down. Maybe some of you are still thinking about this. And what I would encourage you to do is to continually think about those opportunities, those moments in your life where you feel like, oh, this is what I'm meant to do. This is what we're supposed to do. This is who I am. All right. And if anybody wants to continue to share those, you can share them in the comments back on Zoom. So Kuda brought up our next subject, and he said, companies really need to think about their purpose as well. And the two most important days at Entelligence were obviously the first day in business. That was April Fool's Day, 1997. And it was a really special day for me to launch a company and to really even not know what I was doing. But I was in action, and I had this vision of where we wanted to go, and it's really been the same ever since. It was hire great people, give them a great experience here. And if we do that well, we'll go out and do amazing things for our customers. Now, how we articulate that has changed over time. And I think it's given birth to really the second most important day. And that was probably November 14th, 2020. So what was happening that day? Well, you might remember back in 2020, we had this little thing called the pandemic. And it was really a pivotal time for lots of different reasons. One of the silver linings, though, I think early on in the pandemic, when we didn't have vaccines, we didn't know how this thing was going to go, is some of us got to spend a lot of time alone. And I took advantage of that opportunity. I embraced it and decided that I wanted to get quiet to reflect on where I am in my life and where the company is, and to go inward and to start to rethink about, as Kuda said, we're constantly planning and replanning and rethinking. And I used a lot of this time to think about us, to think about where we're going, and marry this concept of both doing well as a company, but doing good out in the world. Let me tell you why I was thinking about that. Those of you that were here in 2020 might remember that our business really picked up in the last half of the year. We were in extraordinary exponential growth mode in the middle of a pandemic. And it created a bunch of conflicting thoughts for me. On the one hand, we're very grateful for all of the things that were going well in our business. We're growing at an exponential rate. The company's never been in a better spot. And those things were certainly things that I was happy and grateful for. But during the pandemic, the world seemed a little less uncertain. We saw our collective humanity suffering in the throes of a pandemic. It caused me to press pause. While we were thriving, other people were barely just surviving. Some people not at all. And the disparity between what was really going well for us contrasted with the hardships and the suffering that I think the pandemic exacerbated. And not only that, if you remember back in 2020, there were a lot of other things going on. Things like bringing to light income disparity and racial inequality, and a focus on climate change more than ever. Even our political discourse was startling to me. It occurred to me that as a business, we needed to do something more than just say that we're a purpose, or a company that's purpose is to lift and elevate people's life. It wasn't enough for us just to grow for growth's sake, that maybe there's something beyond this kind of traditional mission, vision, values, dialogue that all great companies have, that there could be something else for us that's beyond that. And I didn't know what it was at the time, but I wanted to use our collective intelligence, no pun intended, to do some real good in the world. So that day in November, I drove from Houston to Tucson to meet with Warren and to sit down and talk about this idea. What could we do over the next decade if we changed our mindset? And that mindset was to move from talking about ourselves as a company with a purpose to really a purpose with a company behind it. And as you all know, that purpose needed a date It needed a timeline. It needed a big, hairy, audacious goal. It needed to have a mission and a vision and a value behind it. And that's where we came up with this idea to elevate the lives of 1 billion people in the planet over the next decade. Now, why did we choose that number? 1 billion makes us think about things differently. If we want to solve small problems, we can do that easily. And we're going to show you a way that we can do that as well while we're thinking about bigger problems. But you know, we're intelligence and we think about things in moonshots and big, hairy, audacious goals. And that was clear to us as Warren and I sat on the second floor of his barn in Tucson, Arizona, and said, in the next decade, we're going to elevate the lives of 1 billion people. And we had no idea what that meant or how we were going to do it. But what we knew is that we were going to live in Warren's purpose too, which is to lift up humanity wherever we find it, however we find it. We're going to take what we're given and we're going to give it back to important causes to feed and clothe and shelter people and provide access to healthcare and clean water and education, all those things we've been talking about. Things that, by the way, have nothing to do with our business, but have everything to do with lifting up humanity. And that's what we wanted to do. That's what we were trying to do. So let me pause for just a second because I can't see the slides on the screen anymore. And if we could bring them back up, that would be great. On that day in November 14th, 2020, sitting in Warren's barn, we decided to commit the company's time, our people, our resources, our thinking, our money to elevate people over the next decade. And as we began to socialize that idea, we started talking with you about it in the huddles. We started talking about it with you in our team meetings. And much to my amazement, you took and ran with it. In the beginning, we didn't even know what we're going to call this or how we're going to do it, but you guys started calling it the Purpose Project. And so what did we do? We formed a task force. We got together, the task force wrote a business plan. We met with the UN, we met with other world leaders. We started to talk about what we could do as a company. We met with folks just like Kuda that were out doing great things in the world. And pretty soon we started to think about this in our OKR meetings, in our huddles, in the other places where we were talking about the Purpose Project. And just like that, it occurred to me that here we were, now 24 years later after we started the company, beginning to put into action, beginning to operationalize and execute on something that really, a dream that started about 24 years ago. And let me tell you what I mean by that. I'm going to read from the manifesto at the beginning of the book, Above the Line. Back then, I had a dream to build a company that I've always wanted to work for. A company that would be a positive force for change in the world, where everything that we would think, say, and do would be designed to give great experiences to everyone we met. A company that maniacally focused on putting people first, our people, our customers, our vendors, our partners, everyone. So yes, I know that sounds trite and overused, the putting people first part, but it's much more personal for me. It became my singular mission to build a place where we would not only hire great people, but where we would help them tap into their strengths and passion, a place that would lift everyone up. Now, folks, as a company, we're doing well. There's no doubt about that. We can check that box. For the most part, if we look at our lives, our careers, our families, our communities, we're all doing pretty well. But we started the Purpose Project to start to focus outward into our communities and to really become that positive force for change in the world. And for really the past year, our Purpose Project has started to take off. It has wings underneath it. It's gaining momentum. It's getting a life of its own. But it's time now to put that purpose plan into action. It's time for us to give the purpose project a home, a voice, and an identity. So today, I'm proud to introduce Liift. So what's Liift? Well, Liift is really our purpose. It's who we are. It's what we've always done. It's who we are as a company. It's who we are for each other. It's who we've always been. Liift is really the heart and soul of intelligence. And you look at this logo that Twin Engine designed for us, it says everything that you need to know about intelligence. It looks like who we are. This is the heart and soul of our company. This is our DNA. And it's more than just a purpose project. It's really a movement. And we're here at the right time in history to lead that movement. We are Liift. It's our story. It's the story of us, but it's also the story of you. It's about waking up to our individual purpose and connecting it to our larger, more collective purpose. That's what Liift is all about. It's about moving this purpose and purpose project into action, both at home and abroad, both around the corner and around the world, not just elevating the lives of 1 billion, but also elevating the lives of one, the one next door, the one down the street, the one across town. We're all about moonshots, to quote one of our customers, but we also like quick wins as well. Liift is about who we are, and it's about who we're meant to be, and it's about who we're meant to be for each other and for our communities. It's not just about our collective purpose to elevate 1 billion lives. It's about helping you tap into the things that you're also you're most passionate about, so that you can tap into your own community. So what's next? How do we bring Liift to life? And how do we put our purpose project into action? It's really about two things. It's about solving big global problems like zero hunger and the other sustainable development goals that we want to work on, but it's also about solving problems right in our backyard. It's about the 1 billion, and it's about the one. So let's go to the next slide. How do we solve the problem for the 1 billion? Well, I already told you why we picked that number, because it requires us to think about things in a different way. It requires us to think about systems and platforms and think long-term about how to solve systemic problems in the world. So tackling big problems takes big thinking. And we've chosen 4 sustainable development goals, starting with zero hunger. And that's why when we look at folks like Kuda, why we want to create strategic partnerships with him and others, and with the United Nations and other people. There's lots of folks and platforms and companies that are doing this, but we think we could be a voice of connecting this all together, as my friend Parvati says, and solve it with technology. So that's how we think that we're going to move the purpose project forward into solving the problem for 1 billion. Now, let's look at the one next door. And we think about that, the question has to be, what can we do right now? What can we do in our neighborhood, in our backyard, the things that you might be passionate about in your own community? And how can we as a company empower you and support you with things like earned time off and matching funds for places where you want to donate that are in line with what our global vision is for our company? And how can we give you a voice to talk about those things so that you can get more people in your community involved with the things that you're most passionate about? So we think it's a platform, and the platform will live on its own website and within our organization. Because a movement like this needs a home, it needs a voice, it needs a website. We have to have a platform to tell the stories of not only what we're doing globally and what we're doing with our partners and what we're doing with our customers, but also what you're doing in your own backyard. We need to tell your story as well. This platform should be a lighthouse, really, to attract those people, the situations, the events, the customers, the organizations, the partners that will get involved with helping solve big problems locally and globally. And I think that we can become the storytellers to get that message out. So we think that we'll tell stories through podcasts and articles and white papers and pictures and all kinds of things where we can provide a platform to interview folks that are doing big things in the world, like Kuda or other people. But really, you want to think about it this way. It's the 1 billion and the one. It's the stories of the extraordinary, and it's the story of the everyday man doing extraordinary things. This platform should really be about not only the inspiring, but the people that are inspired, about the lifters and the lifted. This is what our platform will give a voice for, and it helps us to put our purpose project into action. So next steps, what are we doing next, and how do we get into action? Well, first thing I think we ought to do is to rethink about how we go about talking about the company. Every time we talk to ourselves, our teams, our candidates, our consultants, our clients, our community, we should all start with, hey, Entelligence is a purpose with a company behind it, and our purpose is to elevate the lives and lift up 1 billion people on the planet over the next decade. The second thing is that we're going to hire an executive director to run Liift. We'll be working on that this quarter, and Jeremy will go hunt down that person for us, but we'll have someone who is used to running big operations like this and who has experience that can help us move this initiative forward. The third thing that we'll do is working with Twin Engine, because they've been thinking about this nonstop for probably as long as I have, is we'll launch our website and our podcast and reweave the conversations into Entelligence. We'll be working with global partnerships like the UN and other folks. That's why I was so excited to think about Kuda. Here's what I mean by that. When you start to connect the dots, you realize, look at what things that we do in the company. Every time one of you guys have an anniversary, you join the company, or there's something special in your event, we send you usually something that's in a box that looks like sugar and flour and milk. And so we could continue to send you Tiff's treats or good company pies that cost us $35 every time we mail one of those out, or whatever it is that we're doing. Or we could send you Kuda's cookies, because every time we send you one of his cookies, somebody just got fed, somebody just got a meal. And that's how we need to think about our partnerships, big and small. And I got to tell you, our customers want this kind of opportunity for us. There are more Katie Mabbitts out there that want to work with Entelligence because they know that we are a purpose with a company behind it. And when they spend their money with us, they're also indirectly impacting people in the world. And then I think we'll get together with the people and culture team over this next quarter, and we'll talk about team member incentives, how we can empower you at your local level to do the things that are in alignment with our vision and values and our purpose that you can do in your neighborhood, like we talked about earlier. So that's Liift. This is what the company is all about. This is why you're here, whether you knew it or not. We're all here together working on this together.